Blog Talk Radio.
Good afternoon and welcome to the program today again. I would like to apologize to those of you who were on the call yesterday waiting for Attorney Glenn Russell. We had 81 live listeners, and I did hear from Attorney Russell after I ended the episode. He had an emergency just half an hour before scheduled start of the program at 1 o'clock. He apologized to all of us, and we are working on rescheduling his episode. Also, yesterday I spoke with one of my friends, one of our fellow foreclosure fraud fighters, and during the conversation I said something that he liked so much and wanted me to repeat on today's episode because he said that everyone will relate to this. So I said that after my experience of talking with so many people from all around the country, we are all wonderfully different in this fight, and that's why we are slowly pushing forward. We all have our own ways of fighting this, but the goal is the same: uncover the truth and ask for justice. These differences are so important in shedding the light on so many diverse stories. And one of the most interesting stories that I came across is a story about Sunny-Sheu. I read about his case, and I'm really honored today to have on the program Will Gallison, Sunny's best friend, and a guy who completely changed his life after his friend's death. What's the most special for me in this case is that Will's life has changed so much, and I hope that all of us have a friend like Will in our lives, a friend who will be willing to do everything humanly possible to uncover the reasons for this alleged murder and the reasons of why law enforcement and government are not doing anything to actually solve this case. So I hope that Will be with us soon. I can't see his number on the program as of yet, so I hope that he will be better luck than yesterday. I just talked to Will 20 minutes ago. So let me try to connect to Will, and I will be right back. Okay, thank you so much for holding. We have Will with us, and Will, I already said in my little introduction about you and before you were live on the program. The only thing that I would like to add is a little description from your website, and then you can continue. A little description about Sunny's case. For 10 years, Mr. Sheu had been fighting a mortgage fraud case which threatened his home ownership. The fraudsters acquired the mortgage of Sheu's home by forging the signature of Sheu's brother. Even though the fraudsters were arrested by the police and convicted for forgery, the banks continued to pretend that the fraudsters' mortgage was valid, and when the fraudsters failed to pay the mortgage, the banks got the house. So with this, I would like to welcome Will to the program. Hi, Will.
Hi there.
Hi, thank you so much for being with us today. And we have so many listeners, and all of them are aware of this story, and all of them I was getting so many emails. They are so thankful for everything that you are doing to shed the light.
Well, thank you to them. I appreciate very much their interest in the story and all of their efforts as well. It's an incredible story. It was my introduction. It was my introduction into the mortgage fraud side of corruption. I had dealt with the judicial corruption before then. The way I met Sunny was actually because I had confronted corruption in a. It was a very simple lawsuit having to do with my music career. It had to do with the contract, and I quickly realized that this contract dispute was fixed, and I was not going to win because the lawyers were working with the judges, and anyway, that led me to about a 6-year battle with the courts. And I made some videos, and I guess I got known among some of the people who were complaining and fighting the court corruption in New York. And it was in actually 2009 that Sunny contacted me because he heard that I was, active, and he heard that I was a pretty good writer, and I guess somebody said that I might be able to give him some time. So he came to me after he had been kidnapped by the NYPD police, the Queens District Attorney's Office, and he asked me if I would help him write a letter to the FBI. It was actually also after he had worked with Milton Alamati, the publisher of the Black Star News, and they had done a bunch of work together, but I guess Sunny, felt that Milton had done enough for him, and he came to me, and I wrote a letter stating... Can
I just interrupt you for a second?
Of course.
Let's back up a little bit, because I did explain a little bit about the case, but when I read on your website, I want you to talk about that a little bit more, and then you can go back to talk about that letter. Because what happened when Sunny found out that bank is foreclosing, he went to the court, and this judge actually refused to look into the evidence, and he proceeded with the foreclosure case, even though that fraudsters under whose name mortgage was, they were in jail. I mean, I'm not sure if they were in jail at that time, but they were convicted of that fraud.
They actually, I don't think they served any jail time. They were. That what happened is they actually admitted they pled guilty to the charge of mortgage fraud and forgery and a number of other things. Big crimes. And they were basically released with no punishment at all. Which shows that they were being protected. They were actually just the front men. And I guess what they did is they said, you guys do this crime. If you get caught, and you will get caught, there won't be any repercussions. You will basically just walk. So I guess the only thing they got was a mark on their criminal record, but they served no time and they paid no penalty.
Wow.
But yes, in fact, that's what happened, and despite that, the judge would not let them go. He still insisted, and then he found various ways when it became too much for him to deny that these people were guilty and that there was pardon me, I should say that one of Sunny's struggles was to get the judge to look at the arrest report, and the judge simply would not deal with him. And that was one way that's one way that these people, that judges, can get away with stuff, is to simply ignore you. And
yes,
there was
and then Sunny didn't have a lawyer. He was doing it all on his own.
He had a lawyer for some time, and I'm not sure exactly where in the story the lawyer was engaged and when but as many of us find, having a lawyer can be more trouble than it's worth at times, and the lawyer really doesn't represent our interests at all. I don't know if that was the case with Sunny, but at one point he couldn't afford to pay the lawyer anyway, and he went at it by himself, and he had a disadvantage of having English as a second language, and I think the judge used every prejudice and every excuse, legal or illegal, ethical or not, to just say this guy is, he's not a credible person. But Sunny was writing letters saying you need to include the arrest of these people and take that into account. And the judge simply wouldn't accept his letters, which is disgraceful, of course. And finally, Sunny wrote a letter to the judge and put it in the judge's personal mailbox, which may not have been a great idea, but it's not illegal. he was in the but he had been stymied so many times before in trying to get the the judge simply wouldn't respond, wouldn't have a conference with him, wouldn't meet with him, and so he took it into his own hands and he put a very innocuous letter just saying, listen, these guys were arrested. Obviously, this is a case of fraud. It can't go on as a normal this foreclosure case. And that's when the judge used that as an excuse to have Sunny essentially kidnapped. He had Sunny summoned to the court, and there he was met by two detectives who took him into custody and threatened him with death if he didn't give up the case, basically. And that was the beginning of the end.
Wow.
Yeah.
So can you tell me then, when you get involved with the case, how I had a feeling from reading the story that Sunny was already afraid for his life because can you tell us a little bit more about his when he was illegally detained by two NYPD detectives, and if you can share what you can with us about that interrogation, what happened when
we only know of what happened, of course, from Sunny's point of view, but I consider Sunny to be absolutely honest and forthcoming, and he had really nothing to gain. It was not in his character to exaggerate even. So he told me what happened in that investigation. He said that they took him into a room. They told him to get into a car. He did not want to get into the car, but they showed him their guns. They took him into a car and they drove him to a room in the district attorney's office, which is very important because it shows how high this thing goes. The district attorney of Queens is a very, very powerful man. That's Richard Brown. And so he's taken into an office there. They lock the door. They empty his pockets. They start looking through his documents. They threaten his immigration status and make, remarks, saying that he could be deported, which wasn't true. But according to him, ultimately they told him to stop fighting this case and that the house belonged to the bank. And if he continued to fight, what they said was, there are gangs in your neighborhood and anything could happen to you, which he took, I think, very justifiably as a death threat.
As a threat, yes.
Yeah. So, and then they threw him out on the street, and he was, there was no record of that. Although we did have a confirmation from a spokesman for the DA's office that in fact he was detained, but they would never tell us who the cops were that detained him, and they would never tell us why he was detained. At one point, the guy said, well, it may have had to do with the fact that he put a letter in the judge's mailbox, but that's simply not constitutional. You have to, you have to go through and get all the judge could do would be to get a restraining order against Sunny, and then if he violated the restraining order, then Sunny could be detained with a warrant. But there was no official process in this. He was simply taken off the street like someone in, Nazi Germany or any other dictatorship, and threatened with death and thrown out on the street. And he was told not to go to the press and not to go to the press and not to go to the authorities. And he, being this guy really believed in the American dream. Probably the most touching. I know you understand that. The most, one of the most moving and disturbing things about the case is that, he said to me, in China they would simply kill me. He said, in America, I will get justice. If I fight long and hard enough, I will get justice.
That's so true, and that I still, I still believe in that. I still believe in justice, even after Sunny's case, even after all this mortgage fraud. I do believe, and you know why else? Because of people like you, Will. You are also justice. It's not only our judicial system that is justice, but people like you, the real people who believe that justice should be served. You are also representing the America and its system. Because when I talked to you before the program a couple of days ago, I asked you, aren't you afraid for your life? Because you are pushing the story that nobody wants to touch.
Yes.
And we will talk later about how media is ignoring this. And you told me, like, you know what, Senka, I'm not afraid, because if we are all afraid, then, like, we can, like, stop living our lives, because it's not worth it to know all this information and just keep silent if you see that something is really wrong.
I agree with you. I mean, yes, I stand by that. You know, it's always, things are only going to get worse. You know, I mean, if we don't stand up, and you know, if there's anything that I hope the story does, is it inspires people to realize that, yeah, if we let this go on, we will all be in the situation of Sunny-Sheu. There will be nobody left. You know, there will be nobody left to stand up for us. And
can you tell us that word from the song? Just a couple, like the beginning. This is the story of Sunny-Sheu.
Yeah, well, it just says this is the story of Sunny-Sheu, but it could have been me and it could have been you. Something
if you don't stand up for what's right,
if you don't stand up for what's right and what's true, we'll all end up like Sunny-Sheu. Yeah. Well,
okay, thank you so much. And then the next question will be like, so what happened? I know that he was detained in January 2009, and then in April of 2010, he emailed Special Supervising Agent Rachel Rogers of the New York FBI. And can you tell us a little? Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more
that
about
was not his first. The email was not his first communication with her. In November of 2009, I helped Sonny write this letter explaining exactly what was going on, that he had been threatened with death, that he was asking for witness protection because he was a whistleblower against the corruption in the courts, and that he had been threatened. And we went to the FBI and had a meeting with Agent Rachel Rojas, R-O-J-A-S.
Okay.
And she essentially told him that she could not help him because his house was worth less than $1 million. And the FBI was not interested in any case that was worth less than $1 million. I mean, that's so shameful and disgraceful on so many levels, especially because he wasn't there so much about his house as protecting his own life. And as if his life wasn't worth $1 million, because his house wasn't worth $1 million. But she didn't. She wouldn't. She said she would look into his evidence, and he gave her a lot. I mean, it was a big, big envelope. You can see in the video that he made, which is on YouTube. I'll tell you about it in a minute. But he's holding an envelope, a very large envelope, with all the documentation that he had sent to them, and they claimed that they looked at it, they made copies, and they sent him back the originals. Of course, even the originals that he gave to them were copies because he held on to the original documents. But essentially, they never got back to him. They never did anything. So it was in February that we wrote to Rachel Rojas, just reminding her that, not to forget about him, and that he was, he felt that his life was really threatened. And he also wanted to tell her that he had been looking into the finances of Judge Golia, the judge who was presiding over this whole thing. And this is very, very important, which moves the story ahead a little bit. Sonny decided that the only way to get this judge off his case was to show that the judge was corrupt in some other way. Sonny was a very, very intelligent guy, but maybe he underestimated, how evil these people were. But he went and he looked. He went to the Office of Court Administration, and he requested the financial disclosure forms of the judge. These are the forms that show basically what does this judge own in terms of holdings and stocks and real estate and cars and boats or whatever he might have. Anything above $1,000 of value had to be documented here. So Sonny got the guy his financial disclosure form from the ethics department, the so-called ethics department at the Office of Court Administration in New York City, And then he went about looking for holdings that Judge Golia might have that are not listed, which would represent a crime, a felony on the part of the judge. They have to have everything that they own. It's especially important because if they have stock, for example, in a company, and then a case comes up that before them that involves that company, it's got to be known that they have stock in the company, for example, to avoid conflicts of interest. But also to show that the judge isn't making, $5 million a year when he's on a $100,000 salary or whatever they make. So Sonny looked into this, and then he had actually worked in intelligence, in computer intelligence in the Taiwanese army. So he was very good at this, and but some of the things were very easy to find. For example, he found a magazine article which was about Judge Golia's beach house in Breezy Point, New York. And the reporter, kind of a fluff piece about, we're at the lovely home of Judge Golia and his wife, and they've fixed us a great meal, and it's a beautiful place on the beach. Well, guess what? That beach house was not mentioned on the financial disclosure form, and that's at least.
And that beach house, as I can see, that beach house was valued at $700,000, and it was not on his disclosure report.
Yeah, not on the disclosure. So, and Sonny actually found many, many things, about $12 million worth of things that were not listed, especially real estate holdings. Now, I can't vouch for the validity. That's what Sonny felt that he had discovered, and I trust him. But maybe some of them could be explained in some way, but one of those items was the beach house, and that's certainly valid. So I went down to the ethics department several times with Sonny to get the financial disclosure form, and then he filed a complaint saying, hey, I did some research, and I found $12 million or so, or $10 million of property that was not mentioned on the, on the form. What are you going to do about that? And they said they would consult Judge Golia, and that's their duty. That's actually what their job is, to ask Judge Golia, say, hey, somebody, they shouldn't mention the name, somebody found that you have property that wasn't listed in your financial disclosure report. What do you have to say about that? And Judge, the answer is supposed to come in 2 weeks, but it took 4 months for the answer to actually come to us. And finally, the Office of Court Administration called Sonny and said, okay, we have Judge Golia's response to your allegations. And so Sonny and I and a friend named Sherry, a doctor friend, a friend that happens to be a doctor, went down there and picked up the response, which was 1 page. It was a letter. It wasn't a list of holdings or anything like that. It was just 1 page, and it said, I stand by my original disclosure form. Wow. Which is basically saying, whatever anybody found that wasn't listed, it's not true. And he said, the only thing that I owned that maybe I didn't mention was a small vacant lot in Queens, which I believe is worth less than $1,000, which is crazy on the face of it, but that's what he said. And so Sonny then reads this thing. I read it over his shoulder, and because he was an irrepressible guy, he shouts, now I've got him. Now I've got enough evidence to put Golia in jail. Because you see, it wasn't until the judge could have written and said, yes, you're right, I forgot about that country house, I forgot about the beach house, I forgot about the yacht and the holdings, and I want to correct the record. Had he been, but then of course he would have had to pay taxes on all that stuff, and the questions would be asked, so he didn't want to do that. But had he come clean, that would have been the end of the story. They have the chance, one chance only, to reconcile what's on their financial disclosure form with what someone might have discovered. But he didn't come clean. He basically stood by his guns and said, no, that's all I own. And so Sonny, of course, said, now I've got it, because now he only has one chance and he blew it. I've got the evidence. He's denying it. Now he's in trouble. And basically, I took Sonny by the arm and I said, okay, let's restrain ourselves and not gloat about this in front of these people that know Judge Golia. Let's go have some lunch. So we went out and we said, listen, Sonny, and Sherry and I said, you've got to be very careful now. And by the way, this was on June 23rd of 2010.
Wow. That was like just 3 days before his death.
Oh, yes, indeed. Right, exactly.
Wow.
And, of course, things happened. Before then, Sonny was so concerned about his safety that he made a video. He had me make a video filming him saying, I'm investigating Judge Golia's finances, and I believe I found things that, that are not, that are irregular and illegal. He said, I just want to say that if anything happens to me, it will be at the hands of Judge Golia and the police, the district attorney police that kidnapped me, and his men, actually, is what he said. So he was saying, if I get killed, it's Judge Golia is going to do it. And this was about 2 or 3 weeks before
before his death.
Before he got the document from Golia. But he was aware that just by looking into these things, he was putting himself at risk. And anyway, so yeah.
So what happened during that lunch? What happened? What did he tell you? That he just does like you said how you warned him during the lunch that to be careful now.
Oh, well, we told him he had to be very careful, and he agreed. He said he would stay by his home. He would be very vigilant. He was aware that there was actually a van that had been following him around because he walked every day around his block. For 1 hour, he would walk as an exercise.
And I just want to. I'm sorry to interrupt you again. If we didn't say this probably at the beginning, he was living alone. He didn't have any family with him here.
That's right.
That's correct.
That's right. No immediate family in the States. He's got 4 brothers and 2 sisters, I believe, who live in Taiwan. Mm-hmm. And he's originally from China, but the family escaped or moved from China to Taiwan. I'm not sure when that was. And then Sonny came to America, but the rest of his family stayed in Taiwan.
Okay, so now back to that white van. You said that he told you that he did not.
He knew that he was being watched, he was being followed, and so we said, you have to be super careful because now they know that you've got him and that you can prosecute him, you can bring this to the FBI, etc. Or publicize it. And Sonny said, yes, he understood. He would be very, very careful. So you can imagine, 3 days later, I get a call from Sonny, and I'm concerned. I hope, I'm thinking, well, I hope, he's not in trouble. And it's not Sonny on the phone. It's his number, but it's a policeman. It says his name is Ramos. And and that he found my number on the phone of a man who was found in a coma with severe head trauma. And, I was absolutely stunned and heartbroken, as you can imagine. And this guy had also called Sherry because he went down the list and called the people that knew that were on Sonny's phone, listed on Sonny's phone. And you said that
Sherry is a doctor. She's a medical doctor.
Yeah, that's right, a podiatrist. But she, went through medical school, and she's a doctor. And so we got in touch with each other. We were both terrified, and Sherry came and picked me up. It took about an hour for her to get here because she was out in Westchester, and it was during that time that I put up the video of Sunny-Sheu that she had made for me because it had been just sitting there. I hadn't posted it on YouTube. I regretted that later, but I realized that nobody would have seen it anyway. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so I put that up. As I was waiting for her, we got into the car, went to the hospital, and that's when the real craziness began. got to the hospital at 8:15, probably 2 hours after I was called. And we went to the emergency room, and Dr. Ahmed came forward and said, "I'm so sorry, we just covered him up," meaning he had just died. So we were beside ourselves, as you can imagine. So he had just died moments before we got there. And they asked us if we could identify the body. So he was lying on a gurney, and they removed the sheet, and we saw it was Sunny. And there was some blood coming out of his mouth. We didn't see the back of his head because he was lying down, and Sherry could have, I suppose, raised his head, but she didn't. It's not. We were still in a state of shock.
Yeah, and because it's just so hard for you because he was your friend.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not. It was a terrible, terrible thing. So when we got over our initial shock, Sherry said, "So what about this head trauma?" And the doctor and the nurse looked at each other nervously and said, "What head trauma?" And Sherry said, "Well, the police officer told us both that he was in a coma and had severe head trauma." And they said, almost falling on top of each other to tell us this, they said, "Oh, no, there was no head trauma. He died of an aneurysm. He just keeled over and died."
Wow.
And we're saying, "You mean there was? Why would the cops say there was head trauma if there was no head trauma?" "Oh, policemen make these mistakes sometimes. He simply." And I took Ahmed aside. We took him aside, and we said, "Listen, you have to know this guy was threatened. A few days ago, he found out information about a corrupt judge. He was certainly being watched and followed. And now we get a call saying he had head trauma. You're telling us there's no head trauma. Are you 100% sure there was no head trauma?" And I must say, this guy was a cool actor, and he swore up and down that he had done a CAT scan, a CAT tomography scan on Sunny's skull, and that it showed that there was an aneurysm but no head trauma. And that's very, very significant. I've spoken to, I'm sure any doctors in your audience or people familiar with CAT scans would know that a CAT scan is designed to show any fractures of bone, and that a fracture of a bone would light up like a Christmas tree in a CAT scan if there was any injury. And here he was telling us that he was absolutely certain that there was no head trauma. So, what do you do in a situation like that? We left, and we went outside and we talked. We had some tea, and we called the precinct and we said, "You know what?" We called the precinct and said, "We'd like to file a report because our friend's dead and he had been threatened." And the police captain, a guy named Chris Austin, seemed to know all about it. He said, "Oh, no, he died of an aneurysm." Like, what? How does this guy know that? This policeman. He said, "Don't worry about it. Everything's fine. I mean, as fine as it can be. He wasn't murdered. He had an aneurysm." He said, and a witness saw him fall down after the aneurysm, which was strange for him to say that. Anyway, we said, "Can you send?"
I'm sorry. Can I ask you this? I know that probably the answer will be no. But did you ever get a written report from that Dr. Ahmed, the first guy who said, or you didn't have right to have it because you're not family?
You mean a report saying there was no head trauma?
Yes.
Better than that. I got him on tape. I had my video camera running the entire time, and I have him on videotape saying absolutely no head trauma. They say that both of them, practically in unison, said not a scratch, not a lump, not a bump, not a scratch on his head. Both the doctor and the nurse said that. So and you can't deny it. There he is saying it on the video. Wasn't facing him at the moment, but it's all documented. And so he wasn't aware he was being taped, of course. So I tend to go into too many details in this, but the long and the short of it is
important. It is really important, and I know that you have only 1 hour, but please feel free if you have time to stay longer, because I see a couple of people would like to ask you a question by the end of your statement. So just like say as many details as you can, because this episode will be heard by thousands. I have a feeling.
Good.
I beg everybody to keep sharing the link, because if we don't fight back and if we don't spread the story, tomorrow we're going to have more Sunny-Sheu.
That's
Sunny
right.
he deserves everything. He deserves justice because he did nothing wrong. And
not only did he do nothing wrong, but he was really a fighter. He was the one guy. I mean, obviously they've done this many, many times to many people before, and every time they get away with another house from some poor Chinese guy or from any other person, they think, oh, well, we can do this again and again and again, and they will continue doing it.
Yes.
And I think ultimately they thought Sunny was a person they could get rid of because he had no family, because he worked for himself, because he was a Chinese person and with limited English, and because the Chinese community, unfortunately, I think many of them being refugees from communist China, they don't like to mess with authority. You know what I mean? If they can stay under the radar, that's where they want to be, because they knew in China that was a death sentence. And Sunny was extraordinarily brave, and ultimately he was doing this for himself, but he was doing it for the principle of the United States Constitution, which he said, and it will always stay in my mind, him saying, in the United States, if you fight for justice, you will get justice eventually. Well,
yes.
It didn't happen for him in that way, but that's why I'm carrying on the fight. And I'm sure he would be pleased if his death inspired people to stop this.
Sure.
This kind of.
So now let's go back to the story. So
we're out on the street in front of the hospital speaking to the police chief now, the police captain of that precinct, who's telling us as if he has definitive information that there was that there was no head trauma and that Sunny just had an aneurysm, as if this policeman had any medical training, or how in the world he would know that. And we asked for a detective to come so we can make a statement, and he refuses to send a detective. So we say, we'd like to make a statement. He said, well, why don't you come in? And we said, no, we don't think so. I mean, at this point, we're pretty sure there's foul play going on. We don't want to be in the police station by ourselves. They can do anything. So we asked for a detective, and he refused. Now, it turned out later, we found out from documents that were gotten from FOIL, that there was a detective from that precinct just on the other side of the wall from us in the emergency room. Apparently, that detective showed up before we got there. So we got there at 8 o'clock. We got there at 8:15. They said he died at 8:05 or 8:10. And a detective was there at 7:30. And the detective was still there. And we found out from documents that the detective spoke with him after we left. So rather than just saying, hey, you need a detective to talk to? Well, go into the hospital. She's in there. It turns out they simply lied and said they couldn't send a detective, which is crazy. So there's so many shady things involved with this. It's hard to know where to begin. But anyway, Sherry and I eventually, we drove home. Before we drove home, we went back into the hospital and we met the doctor again. And he volunteers without even being asked. Dr. Ahmed, this is a young guy, maybe 30 years old. He says, I was thinking about what you said about the head trauma. And we're, yes. And I just want you to be certain that there was no head trauma. So on his own, without even a question, he wants to tell us, don't worry about the head trauma, there was no head trauma. He said he checked again, whatever. So we went home. Sherry drove me to my place, and we just, again, still in shock, of course. And the next morning, Sherry got a call from the hospital. So Sunny died on a Saturday, the 26th. On the 27th, she got a call from a nurse at the hospital saying that she could she come back in for two reasons. One, she had to identify the body again, which is very strange because we signed something that said we were identifying the body. And also, I forgot to mention that the nurse gave us Sunny's cell phone. I don't know why. Maybe she was trying to send us a message because she didn't like what was going on. But she gave us the cell phone. And the next day, another nurse called and said, can you bring back Sunny's phone? We need it for evidence. Or to give to the family or whatever. Oh, no, they said we need it not for evidence. We need to give it to the family. Now, we knew they were not going to send his telephone to Taiwan.
To Taiwan.
But they wanted the phone back because it was evidence, obviously. And we were able to, so we said we'd come in as soon as we could, but I couldn't make it on Monday. She couldn't make it on Tuesday. So we went back on Wednesday. We weren't particularly concerned about giving the phone back to them, and Sunny was dead, so he was not coming back. It really didn't feel like it was a terrible hurry for us to get there. We got there on Wednesday, and we said, okay, we're here to identify the body again for whatever reason. And they said, oh, the body's not here. So what? What? The body's not here. Where did it go? And there was a lot of mumbling and a lot of discussion and a lot of phone calls made. And very reluctantly, the guy said, oh, he's at the medical examiner. The body's at the medical examiner's at the morgue. Which morgue? He said, the Manhattan morgue. And then another woman, who was obviously not on the loop, came out and said, no, it's the Queens morgue. And the guy glared at her. But, in fact, she said, yeah, no, it was the Queens morgue. So, again, taping everything, as I always do, I asked the guy, well, who took the body? And on what grounds? And very reluctantly, he told me it was 3 New York City, New York Police Department detectives. And so, this is very mysterious. And it turns out later, we found out through documents that they arrived at 5 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. You can imagine that's a very priority. How many cops are on duty at 5 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday? And they went to the hospital. This is about 9 hours after he died, to take his body away. Now, if he died of an aneurysm and there was no crime and no suspicion, why in the world are the police taking a body out of the hospital hours after he died? And well, we'll get back to that later. So Sherry and I got in the car and went to the morgue, and there we met the assistant chief medical examiner for Queens, and she was not in the loop. When I say not in the loop, she didn't know of that she didn't know that Sunny had been anything about it. She knew nothing about the case.
About the case.
Her name was Ambrosini. And she was extremely friendly and, conciliatory because she knew that we had just lost a friend. And she had the folder, and we asked her, who brought in the body of Sunny-Sheu? And she said, oh, I can tell you that. And she looked in the page that should have that, and she said, that's funny. There's no record of anybody bringing in the body. And I said, is that normal? She said, I've been here 15, 20 years, or whatever she said. I've never seen that before. And then I said, Dr. Ambrosini, can you tell me if there was any head trauma? Filming all the time, by the way. I mean, or recording anyway, because my iPhone camera was in my pocket, so it probably wasn't. It wasn't aimed at her, but I was getting the sound. And and she looks at she said, of course I can tell you. And she says, oh my goodness, there certainly was.
Wow.
So now she's telling us that there was head trauma when the doctor had told us there was no head trauma and the police had told us there was no head trauma. Now the medical examiner, who obviously had seen the body I mean, well, she personally hadn't, but it had been autopsied by their man, by their autopsyist, and he had said, yes, severe head trauma. And the way her eyes opened, you could see that it was not trivial. This was a major blow. So at that moment, that's when I realized that we were dealing absolutely with a crime here, and that the police were covering it up, and the doctor was covering it up. I mean, that's, if you think about it, to go into, the two of us actually were sort of technically next of kin, because we were the ones asked to identify the body, because he had no family here, and he outright lied to us and said there was no head trauma. I mean, had Sherry decided to lift his head, we would have seen a horrible wound at the back of his neck, in the back, in the bottom of his head, which, by the way, is where, military people and all the people in law enforcement are trained to hit someone if they want to kill them. You hit them in the back, right in a certain vertebrae, C7 or something, under the occipital lobe, and that's exactly where he was struck. So
did you mention to her? Did you mention to her the other report, or you didn't say anything about it?
No, I didn't say a word. Our adrenaline shot up because we knew now that we were in the middle of something very dark. And we thanked her very much, and we left. And I have those recordings of Ambrosini saying that. But moreover, I laid low for about 10 days because I realized, my God, this is a police assassination, and they're covering it up. I come out as the guy who knows what's going on, and I could certainly be next. So I didn't know what quite to do, but eventually I called the morgue, and I, rather surprisingly, got to speak with the autopsyist, Dr. Goldberg, who actually did the autopsy. And I asked him, I said, I'm a friend of Sunny-Sheu, and this conversation, by the way, was recorded and it's on YouTube as well. I said, can you tell me what happened to my friend Sunny-Sheu? And he said, well, from the police report, he fell down and hit his head, right? And he said, and there was a witness. And I said, okay, doctor, I understand that the police report said that. This is the first we've heard of a police report, by the way. And I said, if the police report hadn't mentioned that he had fallen down and hit his head, from the nature of the wounds, could you tell whether it was because he fell down or because someone hit him with a pipe or something? And he said, no, I couldn't tell. I'm basing my opinion only on the police report. So there was a wound that would be consistent with either being hit and behind the head or falling down. And he said, and the police said there was a witness who saw him fall down. So I'm assuming he just fell down. Well, this was the police trying to cover up. The police. We had already been told by the police that there was no head trauma. They did mention a witness, strangely enough, but not that there was any head trauma. And the guy said he died of that. And then, of course, the doctors who had already been briefed by a detective before we got there told us there was no head trauma, absolutely. So this is getting very, obviously very mysterious. So, but now it turns out that the police had sent a report with the body when they brought it to the morgue saying, well, we were able to get that so-called police report through a FOIL request. Me and Milton Alamati, the publisher of the Black Star News, we did a Freedom of Information request from the medical examiner and the police, and we said,
how long? Can you tell us? Maybe you said already. How long after his death did you do FOIA request?
How long after it happened did we get the FOIL?
Yes.
I believe it was quite a while. It was several months later that we finally got to the FOIL. The medical examiner complied and sent us back most of what we asked for. Certain things they did not send us back, but we asked for a lot of documents. They wouldn't send us the autopsy for the autopsy report because we're not direct kin, and that's the law. However, we were given the death certificate, which says the manner and the cause of death. And the cause of death was not an aneurysm. The word aneurysm was never mentioned. The cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head with skull fractures, plural, and brain injuries, plural. So now, in other words, it's very, very important, the wording. It means that he died not of an aneurysm and then fell down and hit his unconscious head on the ground. He died because of the wound on his head, right? And like I said, aneurysm was not mentioned, and the manner of death, for most people don't know this, the manner of death is the cause of death is, knife to the heart, blow to the head, fall down the steps, not fall down, the actual bodily harm that caused the death. The manner of death can be suicide, homicide, natural, accident, or undetermined. There's 5 categories in New York. And all the other ones speak for themselves. An accident, if you get hit by a car or a meteor hits you or whatever. It's undetermined if the medical examiner cannot determine from the evidence that he has how this person came to be hit on the back of the head, right? So it's undetermined. So when I got that call from when I spoke to the autopsyist, I then called, I'm going to flip around in time here because information that I got subsequently from the FOIL request showed the police report. The police, with the body, like a note, basically said, a witness saw this man fall down and hit his head. And our detectives have determined that there was no criminality.
Wow.
Now, that's significant in many ways, but mostly the police are not to whisper a word to the medical examiner of what they think regarding criminality. That is not their job. They send the body to the medical examiner, and the medical examiner says, this was a homicide, this was suicide, this was, the police have no way of knowing if it's just, and if they have a witness, well, that witness has to be, there has to be an investigation if the medical examiner says it's undetermined, and he did. And I think that he actually made that determination of undetermined because of our conversation. I think he was going to go with the police, with what they said, and just say it was an accident or a natural death because he died of because something made him fall down and he hit his head. But he decided finally to say undetermined, and that's opening the door. In other words, he wasn't playing ball with the cops. He, I think, realized at that point, wait a minute, people are watching this. I don't want to get mixed up in a murder case. And so he said undetermined, which now the ball is in the court of the police or law enforcement. They have to investigate. Anytime the medical examiner says undetermined, there's no choice in the matter. The police have to investigate. But in this note that we got months later, we see that the police say,
they didn't proceed with the investigation. Is that?
Oh, there's been no investigation. I've never been called. Listen, I'm the primary witness, and so we asked, of course, in our FOIL request, we asked the police, who was this witness that saw him fall down? We'd like to talk to him or her. There also happens to be a camera exactly on the building in front of where he was killed. So there had to be a video of the incident, which would show whether he fell down. And we asked for that data from that camera. Listen, they're insisting there was no crime. So if your brother or your friend falls down dead from an aneurysm and there's a video of it, they should supply you with that. Right? There's nothing unreasonable about that. And if there's a witness who saw your brother or your friend fall down, and there's no crime involved, then that witness is just, you want to know what were the circumstances of your loved one, dying. But the police have never, ever answered our FOIL, our Freedom of Information, and we're suing them now. That's where the case stands.
So you're suing them now for the broadcast?
Yeah, to get that FOIL information. But I'll get back to that. The point is, where are we now? I called the precinct, the 109th, and this is right after I spoke to the doctor, and I said, what do you know about Sunny-Sheu? He died in your precinct on the 26th. This is about 2 weeks after the incident. And the guy that I spoke to, Andrew Sano was his name, detective, he couldn't find it at first, and then he finds it. He said, oh, yeah, Sunny-Sheu. He said, oh, he died of natural causes. I said, fine. I said, was there any head injury? No. So on the report that he's reading, that he was given by his own cops, there was no head injury. And I said to him, had there been I already knew there was head injury, by the way, because I'd already spoken to the autopsist. And I said, had there been a head injury, would you be alerted? He said, oh, no question. The entire squad would be on it whenever there's head injury in any kind of a case. They do an investigation. Mm-hmm. Later on, we get the report that the police gave to the doctor saying, our squad has determined there is no criminality. But that was clearly not true because their own detective that I spoke to had never been informed even that the incident occurred. Do you follow me? So what's fascinating about this is that the captain of the police in the 109th hid the entire incident from his own detectives, which means that he was operating outside of his capacity as, the legitimate captain of the police of that squad. I mean, of that. So it's very, very intriguing. And one of the other big questions that comes up is why the hospital released the body. It's very, very strict laws that say that a hospital cannot release a body to anybody but a family member if there's no crime. And the police maintain to this very day, almost 2.5 years later, that there was no crime. The man had an aneurysm and he died, period. So why are the police picking up the body? Why did the hospital release the body? And the records we got from medical examiners show that the police came at 5 o'clock in the morning. They asked for the body. The hospital wouldn't give them the body. They came back at 9 o'clock. The hospital wouldn't give them the body. They came back at 12 o'clock, and the hospital gave them the body, the third time, which sounds very much like a phone call was made from somebody high up. And why did they want the body? They wanted the body so they could be taken to the morgue and cremated immediately. That was their intention. And had I not called the autopsyist and expressed my suspicion, it would have been cremated. At the request of who? At the request of someone that the police asked. Well, we found out who, because it turns out that a couple of weeks after my discussion with the autopsyist, the body was cremated by a person claiming to be the executor of the estate and a family member. And we got the guy's name.
Did you know that person?
No, he's no relation to Sonny. And we found out who the executor was later, and it was not this man. And this man has no relation to Sonny. So this is someone who should be, in jail. He actually had it turns out this guy was a funeral home owner who happened to have a hearse. So he came to the morgue and picked up the body and had it cremated, claiming, and it's documented, that he claimed he was the executor. But in fact, he had no relation to Sunny-Sheu at all. So this is how I threw a monkey wrench in their plan when I called the doctor. Because he realized that something was, not the original doctor, the autopsyist, because he realized that someone's paying attention, and I think he then put the brakes on things, and the body wasn't cremated immediately, but eventually they got the body out of there.
Let me ask you something, Well. I'm not sure how many in our audience that know about your story, that you are actually a very well-known jazz musician and harmonica player, and that people recognize your name. So I just wondering, I mean, you obviously don't have to share this with us if you don't want to, but did you ever get contacted by somebody who will not tell you to be careful that something can happen to you, but did you ever feel that somebody is trying to warn you not to proceed with your investigation about this case?
That's a good question. There was an incident not long after Sunny's death where there was a white van illegally parked in front of my house, and I found that strange and reported it. Well, actually, I took a photograph of the license plate, and it was a long story, but it turns out I'm satisfied that was not. And it turns out the guy attacked me and threatened me, and it was a whole other thing, but it turned out it was a big misunderstanding. So I'm comfortable with the idea that was not related. Nobody has ever called me. Many people, of course, have said in the abstract that this is a very dangerous thing, and some people that I've spoken to have said, William, you have no idea who you're dealing with here, and implied that, the Russian mob is in it, and maybe beyond that. But nobody has ever communicated with me. Oh, actually, you know what? I will qualify that. I went to Gerald Nadler, who was my congressman, and I went to his office and spoke to his person there who deals with constituents. I told her the whole story like I've told all of you, and she seemed like she really picked it up, she really understood it. And I said to her, listen, whatever you do, do not contact the Queen's DA, because I do not want them to know that I am interested in this story, because that would really endanger me. These are the people that are certainly responsible for kidnapping and threatening him, if not killing him. And I don't want them to know that I'm looking into this.
That you're engaged.
The next morning, at 9 o'clock in the morning, I get a call from, guess who? The Queen's DA. We hear you have a problem. She said, this woman's name is Laura Weinstock, assistant DA. And she says, we hear you have a problem? Now that's, not the language you want to hear. I said, regarding what? The death of your friend? I said, yeah, I've got a problem in that, as far as I know, there's no investigation. She said, oh, well, we're investigating it. Oh, you are? So what have you found? Now listen to this. You guys are going to love this. She says, oh, well, the investigation is at a dead end because there were no witnesses.
Excuse me, but you said there are witnesses.
Yeah, the police's story was that there was a witness, but they didn't get their story straight with the DA's office. So the DA now is telling me there were no witnesses, so we have no leads.
Wow.
I mean, that right there says everything. These people are all covering up, but they don't have their story straight, so they can't tell the same story. And it's interesting to realize that the whole witness story was for the benefit of the DA, of the medical examiner, because when you bring a body in and the back of their head is crushed, you can't say, oh, this guy died of an aneurysm. You can't say that to the medical examiner. They'll say you're crazy. So they had to come up with some kind of a scenario in which he would arrive there with a crushed skull. And so they say, well, our detectives, there was a witness that we interviewed that said that he fell down. And then they tell the doctor to say he had an aneurysm, but they forget to tell the doctor to mention the head trauma, or they tell the doctor, tell these people there was no head trauma. They just didn't get it right. It's so obvious. But when they go to the medical examiner, they can't lie to him, so they tell him, oh, there was a witness who saw him fall down. Now, when we try to get in touch with this witness, there's not a word. It's been 2.5 years, and the police will not tell us who this witness was or anything else. In fact, the police have been utterly silent.
It just seems like from all of this that it's just a huge cover-up, and not probably huge in the how many people are covering up, but it is higher ups and in every single layer
I will tell you what
the
makes,
story.
I agree with you, and what makes me really feel the scope of it is partly the fact that the hospital itself let the body go. It means that somebody high up called the New York Hospital of Queens and said, we need to take a body out. We don't have a warrant. We don't have anything. We just want you to give us the body. Mm-hmm. And by the way, Milton and I, the Black Star News, we wrote to the chairman and the president of the New York Hospital. We said, hey, you allowed the police to take a body. It doesn't matter if it's the police if they don't have a warrant. It could have been, Joe Schmo. You allowed somebody to take the body of our friend out of the hospital without our permission, or without the family's permission. And your doctor lied to us and told us that there was no head trauma when the medical examiner says there was severe head trauma. That's a big problem. Can you please inform us what's going on? We have never heard from them before. Now, the New York Hospital of Queens is part of a chain of hospitals. These people are dealing with billions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars easily, if not billions of dollars. It's a huge, huge business. They are not casually called by some police captain and told to give up a body. They know that puts them in all kinds of legal jeopardy. So a deal was made at a very high level that morning to get this body out of that hospital. And plus we wrote to Ray Kelly and we said, we have documentation from the medical examiner that your cops, and we included it, of course, took the body out of the hospital. What do you have to say about that? No response for 2.5 years. I mean, the audacity of it is unbelievable.
It is just someone of our listeners just posted this information, and if you can touch upon this also, he says that the Chinese and Taiwan embassies were totally silent about this. Did you try to contact these embassies?
We sure did. We went to absolutely. That's a good point.
Okay.
I went to the Taiwanese embassy, and they were tight-lipped. They would not discuss this matter. They were visibly. So
what did they tell you? They didn't want to discuss it.
They said it's not in their jurisdiction. He's an American. He's a resident in America. They have nothing to do with it. Mm-hmm. He's a legal, a legal resident in the United States, and therefore it's not in their purview, which is probably not true. Of course, they should be all over it. So that's a very good question, and it bears on the scope of it as well. Why don't they want to get into it? Well, maybe it's their own decision, or maybe they were told, don't get into it, at a high level.
What to do. Mm-hmm. Okay, is there anything else you would like to add before? I think we have one listener who would like to ask a question live on the air. Is there anything else?
One thing I just want to say to those of you that I haven't bored away with my rambling is that there is a website that I put up. Finally, I want to get this in, that I tried to get this story to the media in New York City. And I'm talking about the Daily News, the New York Post, the New York Times, Atlantic Monthly, The Nation, Mother Jones, Salon, as I said, the Village Voice. Nobody would touch this story. Now, this was during the Trayvon Martin case. And the real story of the Trayvon Martin case was not who killed, whose fault it was. The real story, because there's those disputes all the time, and it wasn't really a racial story. The story was that the police department in that town in Florida let what's his name go, the shooter, let him go because he said that he was attacked by Trayvon Martin. End of story. Mm-hmm. That was the outrage there. That's what made that story different from other stories. Not that a white guy killed a black guy, or Zimmerman is the guy's name, or that a black guy killed a white guy. This happens every day. It's that the police let Zimmerman go just because Zimmerman said I was attacked. And that was a police failure. Now, I pointed out to these news organizations that this was 1,000 times more egregious because in this case, Sunny was actually targeted by the police and they're actually covering it up. It's not a matter of them letting somebody go. And it was an assassination. It wasn't a fight that ended up in a shooting. So you would think that this would be a story that would be of interest to the media, the local media, not a word. Finally, Milton and I Black Star News. That's a truly independent newspaper. We put out a story about it. And then later on, truthout.org picked it up, and I rewrote the story for them, and that got a lot of attention, but never from the mainstream media. Never NBC, ABC,
no.
Or CNN. So
they don't want to touch it.
So I do want to say that I put up a website, and there's a petition on the website. This is one thing I want to make sure I don't forget to say, so let me just put it in.
Sure.
If you go to the website, which is www.Sunny-Sheu, that's SUNNY, Sunny like a sunny day, and SHEU.blogspot.com. That's the website, and it tells you everything that I've said, but what it does that I can't do is it shows you all the documents that prove and recordings and all the other things that back up what I'm saying. And there is, on the opening page, a thing that says petition, a little banner that says petition, please sign the petition. That's to write to Ray Kelly and say we demand an investigation of this case. And now I'll be happy to take anybody's phone calls.
Sure. Let me. We have somebody from the area code 801. I welcome you to the program. Do you have a question for Will?
Before I begin, I want to have some operational security because what I've heard is an extremely obvious case of cover-up of a significant magnitude. I'm a forensics examiner. I'm very closely involved with the investigation of many trillions of dollars that have been stolen in similar stories to Sunny's. And there's some things that I cannot say on the radio because it will reveal the investigative process, but I will follow this up with you after the show.
Sure.
There is an enormous global looting that has occurred involving lots of judges and law firms and cops. It's being covered up. Trillions and trillions are missing. Now, with that being said, I'm actually from New York, up at Lake George, up at Harris Bay, and I'm giving you this so you'll be able to understand who it is that's talking to you off the air.
Okay, sure.
But you've made some very detailed facts known here, and I can tell you without any question at all, there is a major obstruction of justice that you're describing. I understand the processes in which law enforcement agents are trained at Quantico to document investigations and reports. They're actually trained in accurately recording how it is that they conduct their investigations. And you've said a number of things on the program that obviously are horribly askew, way out of the norm. And I want you to know that. Now, so that you can identify me later, I am very closely related in investigations with Andrew Lehman of a forensic auditor and some other people that are investigating this massive fraudulent foreclosure on millions of people's homes. It's not just Sunny-Sheu, as you noted. There's a lot of us that are Sunny-Sheu, and that's why I'm going to follow up with you. My question to you is, sir, do you fully appreciate and understand how much danger that you're in? You are an extremely huge loose end.
Well, my feeling about it is this, and I said it at the beginning of the show. I've done all the investigating I want to do, and I know that I can't arrest anybody. I have no secrets at this point. Everything that I've discovered is on the website and in the public realm at this point. So to do me in would not serve them anything at all, and would shine the spotlight. I would not go so far as to say I'm a celebrity, but I'm known around the world as a musician, And I'm certainly known in the journalistic community at this point as kind of a fledgling journalist who broke a very big story. Killing journalists is, listen, I appreciate that there's horrible evil here. I mean, killing Sunny-Sheu, it doesn't get any worse than that. And that there's no reason why. I'm sure if I was someone who was threatening to tell something, that they would get rid of me right quick. But I've told everything that I know, and now I'm just, all I do is continue to shows like this. But maybe a few thousand people are listening to this show. I've been on some other radio shows with a bigger listenership. I've been, and I've reported for Truth Out. So my sense is, what do they gain? And you don't see reporters getting killed every day in the United States because reporters don't like their fellow reporters to be killed. And that's where it comes down to their own safety and where the rubber meets the road. They may not talk about Sunny-Sheu, but another reporter gets killed, it gets covered.
May I follow up?
Yes.
The financial reporting on this judge and what he didn't reveal in his disclosures, do you understand the serious nature of those felonies?
I know they're felonies. That's all I know. I mean, I know they're A or B felonies. They're quite high. So, but I don't. That's not for me to prosecute, and people have to look into it because I don't know. I don't know the veracity of the charges.
I have another question. Senka has obviously made it known that we've got time, and she'll do another show if necessary. I have another question. When Mr. Sheu is claimed to have fallen down, was he sitting in a chair? Was he standing on his feet? Was he walking downstairs?
Yeah. No, the circumstances are very interesting and very revealing. It's a good question. I didn't get into that. But
what were the mechanics of the fall? Do you know?
Well, they said that he was found with the pedometer 5 miles from his home on a what can only be described as a deserted industrial wasteland street in the far corner of Flushing, Queens, where nobody in their right mind would ever go, especially a guy who had promised.
We're getting into a homicide now. I just want you to know that. Keep going.
Yeah, I know. Like I said, I don't know if you heard, there's a camera right outside that building that would show exactly what happened.
What did he fall on? Did he fall on dirt, concrete? Did he hit rebar?
No. He was on. Well, he didn't fall. I'm sure of that. I mean, he fell when he was hit. He hit probably rebar, but that's because the rebar was swung by somebody and hit him on the back of the head.
Okay. We'll get into that in a moment. What I'm driving for here,
it's
sir.
It's a good question. Let me just
Have you seen the photographs that would have been taken when he was extricated from where he was found?
No, none of that, because the medical examiner only gave us some of what we asked. The New York Police Department has given us nothing.
Okay, I'm going to leave you with this, sir. You are a witness to an extremely likely homicide. Okay. And I want you to make records of that with friends and with Senka because the Manhattan District Attorney's Office has got a major problem. You're talking to a professional investigator. And I'll follow up later. And Senka, yes? I'd like to thank you for having this and sponsoring this interview. And I want to leave you with this, Ms. Husick, okay?
Yes.
There is such a vast amount of money that's been stolen in the LIBOR mess that's connected to all the other real estate and banking lootings. There's a massive, unbelievable series of felonies associated with the Sunny-Sheu story that this particular program, and sir, I thank you for being a musician and all, but literally, Ms. Husick, this program is making history. And God bless you people, okay? And be safe, sir. You let people know.
Thank you. You know how to get in touch with me? Thank you. Okay.
Yes, Ms. Husick will probably not be surprised who's here on the show, but I want to remain anonymous because this thing is dirty, sir. You have information that Mr. Sheu was killed.
Yeah.
Okay,
he didn't die from a fall. He was murdered.
I know.
You can send me email with your contact information to.
Well, you know Bill Windsor and Lawless America.
Yeah.
The Lawless America group, and then there's the Catbird's Nest, and you're speaking to a proponent of the Catbird's Nest, and I assure you, there's an enormous number of active duty and retired duty military intelligence individuals that are working with Interpol, the Justice Department, Eric Schneiderman, the State Attorney General there from Albany up at the Empire Plaza.
I don't trust him as far as I would throw him, but okay.
I can't agree with you more, sir. This is a massive financial crime, unprecedented in human history. And that judge, I want to tell you something about the judge real quickly, and then I'll get off and let the other callers. You got all the time you need. As far as I'm concerned, you can talk and talk. Well, the judge is falsifying and hiding his assets. And refusing and failing to disclose millions of dollars in property, he should be at Rikers Island. He should be in prison. They should have arrested him a long time ago.
Right.
That is serious felony. And Judge, if you're listening to the program, Chief, you got a problem.
Yeah. Which means that there's complicity by the entire structure of the judiciary in New York.
Sunny-Sheu's voice from the grave. Sunny-Sheu will get justice. And thank you, Seika, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I can say that we are all Sunny-Sheu now because we are continuing. Thank you first, Will, for pushing forward with this story. And but I really feel I have goosebumps after this call and. It is amazing. I really feel like we are all Sunny-Sheu, and if we want justice for all of us, we shouldn't be afraid. We have to keep going and keep spreading this story. For the caller who just called, I'm gonna give you my email, and that's how you can get in touch with Will. It is foreclosurefraud12@gmail.com, and it's amazing. I'm really happy to have so many people listening, and I know that they are saying that they're going to spread the news, and I'm asking them to please sign the petition. Will, you are welcome to come back on the program whenever you want if you have any updates or if you think about something important that you missed to tell us today. Just let us know. And
okay, I appreciate that very much. No, it's
thank you so much.
Great that you're doing this. I mean, this is what people need to do, is have venues that are brave enough and honest enough and not dependent on advertising money and obviously not controlled.
Yes.
Media is the key. It's the only way this is gonna work. And until they shut down media 100% and they shut down your show, we've got to fight, because the next step will be that they shut down your show and shows like.
But if they shut down my show, like my show usually goes Sunday at 1. If they shut down my show, if you don't hear from me, keep going. Somebody else has to continue, because they cannot keep us all silent. I mean, because I can say that because we can see from everything you said, and that this is really something horrific connected to Sunny-Sheu, and this is the only the one case that we know about. There are probably many others. Like we were talking about that lady from Russia. She reached out to me with her pleadings, but I don't know how to help her. So there are many people in this similar situation out there.
Yeah. Great.
So I would like to thank you and enjoy your holidays. Thank you so much. Get some break, Will, and please keep in touch. You are always welcome.
And you're welcome, by the way, to put my email. I'm a very public person. I answer emails, so if anybody wants to get in touch with me,
I will do that.
I hope nobody will threaten me, but if anybody has any questions or concerns or evidence or knowledge of what's going on, I'm not investigating, I should say, but I will pass it on to the people that I know who are investigating.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Will. Thank you again for your time. Have a great day. And
Merry Christmas,
hope to hear from you again. Thank you.
Okay,
same to you. Bye-bye. And for all of you here with us today, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for coming together, not only every week to my episodes, but every day through social media and through so many different blogs and everything. This story had a really huge impact when I read about this and when I talked to Will before the program. But today, like it really touched not only my heart, but it really touched something bigger. It is. I'm not as afraid, but it is just. I feel like a dark cloud is all over us, and that we have to fight with all our might to clean it, to find out the information and to push until justice is served. And tonight is a holy night, and I just hope that Sunny-Sheu is happy with what we are doing for him and for many others who are silent and who are afraid to get out with their stories. So to all of you, my friends who celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas, and may God bless you all. And I hope to be with you again next Sunday at 1. Bye-bye, and have a great day.